before the clang of bronze shields, before the cries of battle, before a single stone of Troy's walls would fall, there was a celebration, a wedding, not of mortals, but of a mortal king, Peleus, and the sea nymph Thetis, destined to be the parents of the greatest warrior Greece would ever know. The gods themselves descended from their Olympian heights, their golden forms illuminating the earth, to feast and rejoice with humanity. A golden apple, tossed by Eris, the goddess of discord, sparked a divine rivalry, inscribed with just 3 words, "To the fairest." 3 goddesses claimed it, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, and turned to a prince, Paris of Troy, to choose. Each offered a bribe. Hera promised power, while Athena promised wisdom. Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite and took Helen from her husband, King Menelaus. Enraged, Menelaus called upon the Greek world for vengeance. 1,000 ships launched. An entire generation marched to war. All for a face, we're told. But behind that legend was something far more dangerous. It sounds like a myth, but what followed was very real. For 10 long years, the greatest army of the ancient world stared at the walls of Troy. Heroes clashed, gods intervened, and the beaches of the Aegean ran red with the blood of a generation. You know the names: Achilles, Hector, and Agamemnon. They have echoed through time, immortalized in Homer's Iliad. But here's what many forget. The Iliad doesn't end with victory. It ends with a funeral. The most iconic moment, the Trojan Horse, isn't even in the story. That detail comes later, from the Roman poet Virgil, in the Aeneid. Already, we're in the realm of myth layered upon myth. What really happened in Troy's final hours is darker, brutal, and far more human than the epics let on. This isn't just a story about heroes. It's a story about the end. By the 10th year of the siege, the so-called Age of Heroes was crumbling. Hector was dead, slain by Achilles. Achilles, too, had fallen, struck down by an arrow to his only weak spot. The champions were gone. What remained were exhausted, starving armies. The Greeks, led by kings like Agamemnon and Odysseus, were thousands of miles from home. Supplies were scarce, morale lower than ever. Troy still stood, defiant behind its legendary walls. Inside, King Priam's people were starving, broken, and grieving. They had lost their best warriors. Their faith was fragile, but they endured. And that's where the Iliad ends. To learn how Troy actually fell, we must turn to later authors, and to the clues buried beneath the soil of modern-day Turkey. When brute force failed, the Greeks turned to deception. The idea came from Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, famous for outwitting rather than overpowering his enemies. He proposed a trick: build a hollow wooden horse, large enough to conceal warriors inside, offer it to the gods as a farewell gift, then vanish. The symbolism? Perfect. The horse was sacred to the Trojans. The deception? Total. The Greeks burned their tents, launched their ships, and appeared to sail away. In reality, they hid behind a nearby island, waiting for the moment to strike. One man stayed behind, Sinon. His role? To be found, to be captured, to sell a lie convincing enough to bring down a city. When the Trojans found the massive wooden horse on the empty beach, they were stunned. Joy turned to confusion. Was it a tribute? A trick? A sign of surrender? A fierce debate broke out. Cassandra, the daughter of Priam, cursed by Apollo to speak the truth but never be believed, screamed of doom. The Trojans ignored her. Then came Laocoon, a priest of Apollo. He thrust his spear into the horse. It rang hollow. But before he could convince anyone, a horrific omen unfolded. 2 sea serpents rose from the waves and crushed Laocoon and his sons to death. The people took it as divine judgment for desecrating a sacred gift. That's when Sinon was found. Weeping, desperate, he told his tale. The Greeks had turned on him. Odysseus had wanted to sacrifice him, and the horse was an offering to Athena. It was too large, he claimed, to fit through Troy's gates on purpose. Because if the Trojans brought it in themselves, the goddess would favor them, and Troy would be invincible. It was a lie, but it worked. The Trojans made their fateful decision. Tired, hopeful, superstitious, they tore down part of their own walls. the same ones that had protected them for 10 years, and dragged the horse into their city. That night, the air was filled with music, laughter, and wine. The long war seemed over. The city slept, but hidden within the wooden belly of the horse, Greek warriors waited, Odysseus among them, holding his breath. In the dead of night, Sinon lit a signal fire. The Greek fleet returned silently to the shore. Inside Troy, the warriors emerged from the horse, killed the guards, and threw open the gates. What followed wasn't battle. It was annihilation. The Greeks stormed the city. Homes burned and temples bled. The air rang with screams. Men were slaughtered in their beds. King Priam was butchered at the altar of Zeus by Neoptolemus, son of Achilles. Women were enslaved. Children were killed to erase the future. Hector's infant son, Astyanax, was thrown from the city walls. Cassandra, clinging to the statue of Athena, was dragged from the temple. The gods did not intervene. It was not war. It was extermination. By sunrise, the great city of Troy no longer existed. For centuries, people believed Troy was just a legend. But in the 1870s, a German amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann began digging at a mound in northwest Türkiye, modern-day Hisarlik, near the Dardanelles. What he found shocked the world. Beneath layers of cities built atop one another, evidence of a massive fire and violent destruction dated around 1200 BCE was discovered. This layer, known as Troy 7a, matches the time and chaos described in the myths. Sling stones, skeletons, burnt walls, a real city, a real war, but likely not for love. Troy controlled vital trade routes between the Aegean and the Black Sea. The motive was probably power, not Helen. And the horse? There's no archaeological evidence for it, but that doesn't mean it's meaningless. Some historians think the horse was a metaphor, perhaps for a battering ram wrapped in horsehide to prevent fire. Others suggest an earthquake, a gift from Poseidon, god of horses and tremors, was later remembered as a divine horse that shattered Troy's walls. Whether real or symbolic, the horse endures because it tells a deeper truth. Cities don't always fall to force. Sometimes they fall to belief. The walls of Troy didn't fall to heroes. They fell to a lie. And from those ashes, a story was born. One that's been told for 3,000 years. But why did the Trojans bring the horse inside? Was it arrogance? Exhaustion? The manipulation of fear and faith? What would you have done, standing on those walls, staring at a silent beach and a mysterious gift? Let us know in the comments. Because sometimes, history isn't just about what happened. It's about the choices we still make. If you enjoyed this dive into ancient deception and myth, give the video a like, subscribe for more untold stories from history, and hit the bell so you never miss what's next. The truth behind Troy may never be fully known, but its last days still echo with a warning. Beware Greeks bearing gifts. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.